Hi ladies and gents, this will be my final video of the end scale of Peterborough in South Australia circa 1968, when all three gauges of rail were running. Peterborough is one of only two towns in Australia that ran three gauges of rail. There was Peterborough and a town just to the west, Gladstone, between Peterborough and Port Pirie in South Australia. They were the only two that ran all three gauges. Different states had different gauges, and what would happen would be the trains would come to Peterborough, they would unload everything, people, freight, stock, everything, and then everything would be changed over to a different train of the gauge where they were headed. It wasn't until about 1972 that standard gauge was put in and taken up by all states, and then all of the different gauges were ripped out. So in '68 Peterborough was pretty much in its heyday. There used to be around 2,000 rail movements every day between locomotives, stock and freight, so it was pretty full on. You've got the roundhouse and the turntable and the workshops, which nowadays is the Steamtown Heritage Railway Museum. There used to be more stuff on to the west of this as well. Going down the main street, you had all of these yards and all of the different tracks near the station, and you had little spurs coming off, like the one across to the pub to deliver the beer. There was also a small turntable up here that used to be for the small locos, as well as access to the old ice factory. Everybody used to wake up in the morning, go and grab their ice and stock up their ice box before fridges and power were here. So in the old sandstone railway station, all of these yards, there was also the electrical shed and the goods shed, and other bits and pieces that used to be around town. Now you've got the Indian Pacific that comes in from Perth through Port Augusta, through Peterborough, and then heads down the main straight and out towards Broken Hill and off towards Sydney. That rail is still running, that one there. Now on the other rails here, you've got the steam train, which comes in from Adelaide via Burra and Tarawi. It stops here and then comes along, crosses over the main line and comes out towards Orroroo and onto Port Augusta and then to Alice Springs. This used to be the original Ghan line as well. Nowadays the Ghan goes all the way to Darwin, but it now bypasses Peterborough and goes from Adelaide up to Port Pirie, Port Augusta, and then on to the Alice and Darwin. So we don't have the Ghan come through here anymore, but this was the original line. Tarawi, which is just to the south of Peterborough, is where General MacArthur made his famous speech, "I will return," talking about the Philippines during World War II. Peterborough was big for troop movements and so forth during World War II, for everything heading north from the west coast and South Australia, heading to the east coast to go up to Cairns and Mareeba and Townsville. And also from the east coast, things would come through here and then join up with the Ghan line and head up to Darwin. I've actually got a couple of bits here that I've put in to represent the World War II as well, just tanks and stuff, which still nowadays come through every now and again, usually by truck nowadays. But now with this, basically most stuff has had to be handmade. I couldn't buy houses that looked like the Peterborough houses. I couldn't get shops that looked like the Peterborough shops. There's about half a dozen things here which I have bought and then modified. I think there's only 3 things I didn't have to modify, one being the pub. Or actually, yes, I did have to I put the veranda around that, but that's, yeah, don't worry about that. There was what's now the hostel, and one other little house there. Everything else has had to be either made from scratch or modified significantly. Even the station, I had to cut, when I bought that, I had to cut some bits off and add the toilet block on the end, take off the veranda roof because the original station here had the exposed beams, no veranda roof on it. Now this is a full day-night display, so there's houses that have got lights in them, there's all the street lights, there's cars that have got headlights and tail lights. For example, that car there that's got the headlights and tail lights in it. There's a truck over here that's got the headlights. Oops. And there's more cars and so forth along the main street that have lights in them. Originally I was asked to build this in around about 2009, early 2010 I think it was, and it was due to go to a museum here in town. It was only supposed to be a basic setup back then. I let the group involved know what was going on the whole time, created a Facebook page so that they were kept up to date and could see photos and everything of the build, etc. When it was done to what they wanted, they said that apparently they'd changed their mind and somebody should have let me know, but they didn't. Otherwise I simply would have stopped then. N-gauge is not, or N-scale is not a cheap option for model railways. It's one of the more expensive of model railways. So for the next, I suppose 6 years after that, 5-6 years after that, I've just been adding bits and pieces in the hope that a person or a company would buy it and have it on display. I've added all of the street lights, a lot more houses and buildings and so forth, the cars that have got the lights in them, rail signals, like as the Indian Pacific comes in, we've got the signals that are tripped by infrared signals, and once the trains go through they stop flashing, and then when another train comes through they start again. There's also like that red signal just there. When this train goes through, it'll go to the green. Same as the Indian Pacific. when it comes through. Now over this time I've been adding all of these bits and pieces, getting small locomotives, etc., in the hope somebody would get it. I'd advertised it in some local Facebook sites, but I hadn't actually advertised it locally in town. I wasn't a member of any of the groups here. It wasn't until about a fortnight ago I joined up with a couple of the sites here in town, and then I decided that it was time I wanted my room back, so it was time to do something with it. If I couldn't sell it, then it was time to rip it down and sell it off piece by piece on eBay. So I thought, rightio, I'd invite the town around so that, you know, they could have a look at it, see what Peterborough used to be like, and I'd let it run for a couple of days and people could see it, and then I'd do it. I'd rip it apart. Well, the town showed a fair bit of interest, which I'm very, very thankful for. Some people were prepared to start crowdfunding so that it could be put into a spot where the public could access it and see it. And then a business contacted me and they have now purchased it. Well, are purchasing it. Yeah, are purchasing it. So it will be going in a shop in the main street of Peterborough for the public to be able to see, which is great. I really was not looking forward to ripping it down after all of the time and work. Over the, it'd be coming up nearly 8 years, I think. Be around about 8 years now since I started the build. This has cost around about $22,500 and has taken, well, as of this time last year, it was around about $22,500 and 40,000 hours. I don't sleep much. I get about an hour's sleep a night, maybe 2 at most. So other than that, I was in here 18-20 hours a day most days. I haven't been able to work since an accident, so I just spent all my time in here just building this and building all the houses and everything else. So it was just in here all day, especially during winter. I don't go anywhere during winter. I used to get all my shopping delivered and I'd just be in here building. The only time I wouldn't be in this room was to sleep, basically. So this is the Peterborough side, and this is the other side. This is just for trains to turn around, basically. They had to turn around, so I thought, oh well, I'll put some scenery on here. Getting back to costs though, like I say, this cost about $22.5 to put together, and that was just in the parts what I had to buy. I'm not getting nearly that back, but I'm okay with that. It's being shown in town, it's staying in town for one, and it's going on display, which, you know, I don't mind losing out to have it used for what it was built for. As I was saying earlier, N-scale is not a cheap model railway. A simple little loco like that, an 060, or even a small diesel, you're looking over $100 just for a locomotive. Something like this British locomotive, or something like this here, which is a 462 with the tender. There's around about I think that's $325 for that one, and all the way up to something like the big boys, which are 484s, you're looking around about $600 for a locomotive and tender. So it's not cheap. A turnout, a simple turnout, is around about 40 bucks, all the way up to say $80 for a large radius curve turnout. I think I worked it out one day that there's well over $1,000 or close to $2,000 worth of just turnouts on this, I think it was, not quite sure. So yeah, N scale's not cheap. You can buy 3 times as much HO, which is twice the size of what you can with with N. Also with N scale, you can't get road trains. You can buy trucks, but you can't get road trains. So like these road trains that I've built, what I've actually done, and just get this up here, I've actually built cut down trailers so that I can make a B double, and I've actually cut down trucks, cut them up so that I can make dollies, and from there I can make any combination of B double or road train simply by adding bits and pieces and, you know, work out what's wanted and build up whatever. So I've made up a heap of road trains for here because this is one of the main road train routes for Australia as well. So it's not just rail that's big in Peterborough, but also road trains. So since I couldn't buy them, I thought, well, I've had to build the houses, so I might as well build road trains as well. So a bit of a plug, if anybody wants N-scale road trains or B doubles, give me a yell. I do tankers, mixed freight, there's also the refrigerated units. I get flat deck trailers and make tippers out of them, or else there's just the flat deck trailers that carry loads on top. So if anybody's interested in those, give us a yell. It takes a few weeks for the trucks to get here from overseas, and depending on what combinations wanted, a couple of days to modify them and cut them down and put them all back together again. So yeah. Now I do have to give a big shout out to a mate, Ian. He used to deliver the parcels every day, because when I was doing this I had to contact England for all of the rail plans. They didn't even have the rail plans here in Australia or even South Australia, anywhere. So I had to get that information from England. I think it was because Australia used mainly English locomotives, so for some reason all of the plans were over in England. So all I had was the plans for the actual rails. That was it, no buildings, anything else. So Ian actually helped me out a lot to figure out what used to be where. There's not that many people around town that remember or were here when during this time, so it was a bit hard for me to figure out what was exactly where. I've only been here 13 years. So a big shout out to Ian and a couple of the other people that helped me out to figure out where things went and so forth. Thank you very much, guys, much appreciated. So yeah, I think that's around about it. Now the person that's buying it doesn't want to be known at this point, but once it is set up and on public display, I will update this video in the description to let people know where they can go and see it. It will be in one of the main shops in town, so that'll be good. So that's around about it. So this is the end scale of Peterborough in 1968. Just as a last thing, just to show the size of N scale compared to HO. There's a car, so it's 160 scale, so very, very small. Half the size of a normal HO anyway. So yeah, that's about it, guys. This is my last video of this, so anybody wanting to see it in the future will be able to do so in a shop in the main street. And yeah, alrighty, guys, have a good one, and I shall catch you later. See ya.